Got it. You had your hand raised. Oh,
Yeah. I've been a parent for 4 years. So I'm still kind of new. I feel like I'm still figuring it out what works for me. I'm a single parent. So being a single parent and raising a little boy, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I I don't know. I mean, if I'm being honest, I want to cry. Maybe it's just being a parent in general. Like, I don't know. It's, I mean, I guess for me, it's like every single day. Oh, he hit somebody. Oh my gosh. Or he talked back to me, or he threw dirt on somebody. And I know he's still little. So for me, the biggest challenges that I'm facing with him is that when I say no, for something, it's the jumping up and down and screaming. Well, okay, why are we screaming about that? I said, no, you should just be like, okay. It's like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. It's like I'm figuring out how to fix that. But it's also like, I don't, it's like in America, uh, well, in India, we parent differently. If I say no and you do that, oh, you're getting your butt spanked. So it's like here, yeah, I don't know. So that's like my biggest challenge right now, but at the same time it feels like I don't know, I'm like his dad isn't in his life, so he's not getting that male presence in his life. So I am not sure how to give that side of me to him. I can't be that male and a female, if that makes sense. I don't know if I'm making sense.
you're
Yeah.
making sense. One thing I will recommend is karate.
Oh, oh, okay. Yeah, I've been wanting to put him into sports because I heard that takes a lot of aggression out. But oh my gosh. I thought, okay, so whenever I do say, like, if I do give him like a consequence, like, oh, no TV or anything like that, he does get really angry. And I wonder if that's the genetics because I had to work on that myself. I don't know. I don't know. Who knows? But yeah.
What's up, Kesan? And then we're gonna go to Mikala.
So, to piggyback off Indian goddess here in the States, excuse my friends, at least I know in my community, um, coming up, we whoop ass. Um, that's what we do. That's what I was always been. Even now, it's more political now. Court systems get, but like that was it. Like, I guess the upbringing was similar to what you're used to back home, where you do something, you get torn up. We used to have to go and get our switches, or send you outside in the backyard, bring it back in, and they gonna whoop you with the one that you picked out. If it's not good enough, they'll send you back out there to get another one. You know what I mean? It was a process, but I guess back to the topic though of the challenges in parenting. My child's mother resides in New York, and the mother of my child. I don't like saying the baby mama thing. That's another thing. But the mother of my child, she resides in New York, and I reside in Florida. I think the biggest challenge is I grew up in a two-parent home, and for her not to be on the home front daily is probably one of the most hardest things because I didn't grow up like that. I didn't have that type of division. I think over the years getting used to having to travel back and forth and all that stuff, I was groomed a little bit different than most because accountability was something that was always on the table. And my father, as soon as So a little after I was born, he got into the military because he had a kid. I was there for my family's journey, my parents' journey, and I was the key to that journey beginning. From what I'm 41, my parents met, like, I think they've been together since 42 years, married 40. So all I've seen my parents through their 20s, their 30s on up, you know what I mean? So I kind of grew up with my parents, if that makes sense, and seeing their journey along the way. So not to be able to have that day-to-day interaction, like when she's sick or, something's happening at school or anything, you know what I mean? And not physically being able to be there is probably one of the most taxing. I think it's a mental, drain, because I even went as far as moving to it and trying to, do the whole family thing, not necessarily in love, but just for my child. You know what I mean? That didn't pan out, you know what I mean? And then someone, gave me some wise counsel. It was like, you can't continue a relationship just because of a child, which made sense because, when I heard that she was born, I had 3 jobs at one time. And I literally would get up in the morning, come home like midnight, and do it all again, get a few hours of rest when she was when she was born. That's how it was. And it had an effect on the relationship part of it because I was never around, but I was literally at work. You know what I mean? Yeah, I think my biggest challenge is not like having the heart to be there 24/7 and not actually being able to fulfill that. You know what I mean? And I give kudos. I never disrespect, the mother of my child, because, those late nights when, she was going through her terrible twos, and, she's waking up with baby powder everywhere and she has to be to work in a few hours and she has to clean it up, still get the baby ready and still do this, that, and the third. The difference was if that was to happen when she was living here in Florida, I would be the one, you know, well, my baby was good. She slept through the night. But like if it came down to change of Pampers or do anything like that, feeding her, watching her, or doing it, whatever, I was more a hands-on parent because that's what I was used to. But not being able to do that, it's kind of like, the years go by. She's 16 now, and it's like every opportunity that I have to make a strong impact in her life, I make sure that I show up for it. But it's that day to day, you know what I mean? It's like when children have fathers that live literally in the same city, or even if they leave the state away, you know what I mean? It's like I look at them and I'm like, you know what I would give to just drive 7 hours instead of 17 or 20 plus hours? You know what I mean? Like that, I don't know. I don't get how you can have a kid so close and not pick them up from school. Or, it's like I can go on and on about, things that I see around me and people dropping a ball and they have a gift that some people just don't have. You know what I mean? They have to plan to see their children. And all you have to do is wake up in the morning and either drive a couple of blocks or whatever it may be. So yeah, and I've been married too. So another thing with her distance is getting up in the morning and doing what I would do for my daughter for a child that's not biologically mine, and exuding all of these qualities that I wish I can be. I wish I could wake up in the morning and cook my daughter breakfast, like those simple things that we take for granted, just helping her out with her homework instead of, FaceTiming and we do this, just that in person thing. element that was missing. So, but we made it. We made it. Like, we made it through. You know what I mean? And I'm glad and proud of the journey. But you know, maybe that's the reason why, even to this day, I'm 41, and it's like I still want that full experience of parenthood. Because I feel like low key I was robbed. But you know, it is what it is. It's life. But that's it.
And so speaking on basically touching on what God has said, I will say kudos to you for being a single mother. I was also and still am a single mother, girl. Even when I was with my children's father, I was still a single mother. I did everything for my daughters. When I literally say I bled, shit, ate, slept my daughter's day and night, that was me. And even when their father was present, he wasn't present. You get what I'm saying? He didn't even know what school they went to sometimes. He didn't even know what time they got out of school. There was times when I was at work and all his job was to pick them up from school, and he couldn't even do that because he would be so high, lividly high, parked in their school parking lot and then fall asleep. There were many a times that I got called by the school, and I always prayed to God, like, my God, I hope that they don't call social services on me, you know, because I'm being the upstanding parent and working and whatever. And all your simple job was to just pick them up. But you were not even parent, a proper parent to even pick them up because you were so high parked in their school parking lot and you fall asleep. I literally had to call his friends to go wake him up. And it just, like I said, again, God is kudos to you. I've been a single mom for 20 years. Okay. And I still am. And I'm still raising them and I'm still learning, and I can't wait actually for the next journey of being a grandma, you know. At the same time, it's like it is hard. It's a hard job. And I understand you have a boy, and I know, like you said, you cannot be a mom and a dad, but you can be an outstanding mother, and be that for him. You know what I mean? I want to say to Kesan that, you're an upstanding dad, you know what I mean? And I wish that I had what you want to be for your daughter. You see what I'm saying? And it kind of resonates to me. And I'm just like, there are so many people in this world that want to be a parent and cannot be. And it is utterly disgusting to me. And then come to find out after 21 years of my part of my life that I gave up to a man that I thought I was going to marry after 5 years, to come to find out by the 21st year where we decided to part, that he had another family. You get what I'm saying? And they're in between both of my daughter's age. And, and now seeing that, it puts hurt in my children. And like I said, we've been to therapy after therapy after therapy. And I don't know how much more therapy we need. And the only thing I can honestly tell you that got us really through was God, and praying and crying and praying and being able to just love on my daughters and them loving on me, and mom, it's going to be okay. And, and I tell them it's going to be okay and we're going to be okay, and because like I did explain to someone earlier today, I forgot who I was talking to, if I was talking to Sissy, to Val, or to Unc, but I had mentioned something about, where I live here in the Bay Area. I have no family here. We're alone, but we do have friends out here that became family, but it's nothing like your own. You know what I mean? And my family lives up north. They're about an hour and a half away from me. So it becomes a sore subject. You know what I mean? And even knowing that, I just kind of feel like, honestly, we just got to give kudos to ourselves for being parents and who we are, whether we're with someone or not, and doing it solo or by your whatever. I feel like we're doing the best that we could do and be the best version of ourselves every single day. And again, like I said, this AIO family did not meet by accident. Not at all. I think it's truly purpose, and it's purposeful. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like, what we bring to the table is fire. And I can't wait. I can't, I really can't wait. I know when I was talking to Unc early this morning, 6 a.m. my time, 9 a.m. their time, and I was like too fired up, and I was like, I can't wait. I said, I'm about to call him right now. And I was telling him, I said, what I've seen God tell me is that I see fire, I see desire in what we're doing, and He's gonna take it real far. And like I told Unc, I said I see a 6 month to less than 1 year window, and we're gonna fly. And we're gonna be so busy, we're not gonna know what to do with ourselves. But you know what? I just thank God for this platform. I thank God for each and every one of y'all. Things that you bring to me, that you bring joy to my life, and colors and things like that in my life. And just I just want us to just keep going. That's all.
Kesan, I just want to mention something that you had said before I dive into what I'm going to say. But my youngest daughter dad lived, I'll say, about 3 minutes up the street from me. And that was like the most hurtful thing to know. You live that close to us and never came to see my daughter. It angered me. I was so angry. And when you said that, it just brought back to, that feeling of, like, how dare you live this close and not come see your daughter? But yeah, it's sad. But I want to say I got a lot of them. But as y'all was speaking, I thought back to when I had, both of my girls or whatever. My biggest challenge was not doing to them what had been done to me. And so I just kept praying about it or whatever. And then, you have different people giving they different, well, you need to do this to this child, you need to do that. They were just telling me. And so for a minute, because, it's almost like I was trying to do things to please the people instead of like going with what, parenting don't come with instructions. So I remember saying to God, I said, God, teach me. I told God, I said, I want to raise my children in the admonition of you. I said, I know I'm not perfect. And I said, but if you teach me, I was crying. I said, but if you teach me how to do it, I'll do it. I said, I'll do it. I said, just teach me. And from there, he just started teaching me, how to get on. Because each child, they have their own personality. So they are two individuals for my daughter, which is 27 and 23. So everything that I was teaching, he just tell me what to say. I consulted him for everything, even down to when they was, want to date or whatever, I just consult God about it. With that being said, moving forward, as they was getting older, one of my biggest challenge was letting go. How do I let go? And I was like, and I had to go into prayer about that. So God is carry you through as you're raising your son. Is going to carry you, because it carried me. And so he just taught me what to do, because I remember I had some young ladies over, and it was like, you got a boyfriend? And I'm like, you don't have a boyfriend. I said, no, she don't. So I kept saying it. So every time they come over there, tell me. And I remember hearing God speak to me and say to me, you're going to teach her not to tell you nothing. So you got to get involved. And so what I did was I went in the room where all the girls were, and I was like, where's your boyfriend now? I just started asking her stuff. And so from there, we build a bond. And, and so she was able to tell me. And so a lot of my teaching that was done with my older daughter, I used it with my baby girl. But, like I said, they're two different individuals. So, but for the most part, it worked. Moving forward, as they became, my oldest daughter getting ready to go off to college. And that was like one of the hardest things, like, okay, I had got to a place where I learned to let go, but I didn't let go totally, because when she was in college, if you answer my call, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's a saying that when they're kids, they're on your lap, saying you have that control, but when they become adults, they be in your heart, saying you always praying, for protection for them or whatever. So I was just wanting to name a few of the challenges that what bothered me, and it's just like, oh my God, trying to let go. But like I had stated earlier on live, you know, I went through some challenges with my baby girl trying to figure it out, because she was totally different from my oldest daughter. So I went through a lot of challenges or whatever, and I'll say it worked itself out, you know, but it took a lot of crying and a lot of praying to get to that place where it did work out. And for that, I am so grateful, whatever. And I still go through, like, you know, challenges now, but the challenges aren't as bad, you know. I mean, like you said, your children are gonna have a heartbreak. My you know, my when I see like she messing up, this is not the person for her. It was a challenge for me, but I had to say, you know what? I'm just gonna fall back, let her live her life, and just pray that she will be able to come to me and just talk to me, you know. So I just became acceptive of, you know, if this is what you want and you like, if you like it, I love it. And so that's the challenge that I've been facing now, but it's all good. And I lay my plane.
All right, Goddess, you had your hand raised.
Yeah. I have a question. So my question is, what would the advice you guys would give anybody that's a young or a new parent that's raising, 3, 4-year-old? Like, what advice would you give us, like, for behavior problems?
Go ahead, McCall.
So, personally speaking, I don't believe in spanking my children. My voice kind of carries. So, I remember trying to discipline my daughters, and the only thing I could ever do is honestly like giving them a timeout. And even giving them a timeout, they would laugh at me. And so, what I had to learn to do was kind of put a little in my voice, you know, and be like, look, sit down. You know what I mean? You take your 10-minute, sit down, be quiet, you'll get a snack after your timeout, you know? And what I also learned through therapy is learning to take things away that they like. What do you call it? iPad or phone. Kids nowadays, 3, 4 years old, they got their own phone and tablet and all that, because I know my children had phones when they were like already in like end of elementary, beginning of middle school, like just so that in case any emergency happened, they have their own phone. But basically, my advice to you is just put a little more in your voice, because you're so sweet spoken, you know what I mean? And just say, just mean it with authority, be authoritative and take away certain things that he really likes and see if that works for you.
Who we got next? We got
All right,
you next.
Roger that. Let me get my camera on here. All right, so one of the things that I would actually say is, like, for new parents, man, is you have to understand that kids are going to push and test boundaries, right? We all do. You know what I'm saying? It's gonna always be that give and take, that push and pull. You know what I'm saying? Like other people said, you have to learn. One, you can't raise everybody the same way. All right. You can't lead everyone the same way. So you have to look at your child. And I personally do not believe in gentle parenting. I'm just gonna come out and say it. To me, it doesn't work. To each its own. If it's working for you, then by all means, you go ahead and you handle that. You know what I'm saying? You raise your child how you see fit. In my opinion, I think that even going back to the word, if you spare the rod, okay. All right, y'all feel me. So I'm not going to even finish that, right? You know what I'm saying? It tells you that you will spoil the child. You know what I'm saying? It is written that if you spare that rod, you will spoil the child. So certain things I believe in, I do believe in timeouts, and I also believe in time ups. So if the child is not doing everything that they're supposed to do, then by all means, you know what I'm saying, take away this, take away that. And if they're still doing the same thing, they're not learning the lesson. It's either that they're not learning the lesson, or they still feel that there's room to push that boundary farther, you know what I'm saying, in whatever direction they're going in, because you're not standing firm enough in that. Now, at the same time, I have to tell you that there must be balance, because being too firm on a child can also have a negative impact on them as well. So you got to find the balance between, like I said, every child is going to be different. You can't raise them all the same. And you know what I'm saying, one you may just be able to say something to, and then they'll pick up and they'll go and do something. And the other ones, you might actually have to put them, you know what I'm saying, do things to them, you know what I'm saying, to persuade them a little bit more to do what it is that you want them to do. But kids are going to push boundaries. Even as adults, we push boundaries at work, you know what I'm saying? So just keep that in mind and do what's best for you based upon how your child reacts to the level of authority that you push forward. You don't have to go all the way. You know what I'm saying? You might be able to dial it back just a little bit. That's all I got.
Thank you.
Yeah, I believe in you spare the rod, you spoil the child. And I can remember, like I said earlier on your live, my oldest daughter, easy breezy. She made motherhood easy for me. But my baby girl, that was another story. And I remember when she was 4 years old, I think I had got married at that time, and she started, really started acting out. Uh, she just act out. But anyway, she was used to the bathroom in the bathtub. Um, she was always acting as if she was so scared to sleep in her bed. She don't know how to do nothing. She just, it was so much or whatever. And I remember thinking like, what in the world has happened? And so at that time when she was like 4, she was so little or whatever, I didn't really want to, use the rod on her. But when I did use the rod on her, I made sure after, everything gets over with and, gave her a moment, I call her in my room, or either I go to her room and I ask her, why did it have to happen? And that's one of the techniques I learned with, just dealing with children, period. Anytime you chastise them or have to use the rod or either, take away something from them or whatever, you always kind of go back and talk to them and see did they understand. And I think I used that method because a lot of time when things were happening to me, I didn't have a voice. And so I always want to give my children a voice. So that's something that you can do. But, like Unc said, to each their own, but you sometimes have to use that rod. But if the shoe fit, wear it. If it don't, like with my oldest daughter, I don't even remember giving her, using a rod on her not many of times. So that's all I have to say.
So I guess I can play the devil's advocate right now. And the reason why I say that is I believe in, chastisement and all that, but does it actually work? That is the question. That's the question of the day. Does it actually work? Because my brother used to get his behind torn up all the time. And the track record, my boy done been to prison. I'm talking about federal crimes, all that. He went down, the lane that they were trying to prevent him from going down. I really think it comes down to the actual child. You're going to be at a disadvantage as a single mother because typically you would be the nurturer, loving hand, and the father would be doing the chastisement, right? Chastising. And that was the kind of like the dynamic in my household growing up. My mother would be like, I'm going to tell your father. It's like, oh boy, it's the end of the world, And, my father used to do some things. He was, military, so he used to boogie snatch you out the bed. I'm talking about you sound asleep, you know. So, what's going on? You know what I mean? Your mother tells me this and that and third. So he established that dominance where if he looked at you, you knew what time it was. And you see it often, you know what I mean, where one parent is, they are trying them, like they said, push those boundaries with them. And then You get the father or the more dominant parent coming in the presence, and they know, okay, all right, it's time to straighten up or whatever. So as single mothers, you have to wear both hats, and being that you got to work both hats, it's like I have to be the disciplinary, or like I have to show discipline, but also behind that, I have to show the loving side too. I have to be understanding, and that can be confusing too for a child. So I would say try different methods until you find out what works or grabs his attention to do better. It's a trial and error. Nobody can tell, I believe nobody can tell anyone how to necessarily, it's no rule book to parenting. Let me just put it that way. It's no rule book to parenting. All you can do is the best that you can do, because there are factors like my nephew, he has autism, you know what I mean? And he does this thing where he's very smart. He loves numbers. He's good. I'm talking about Rain Child type with the Rain Man, the movie, Rain Man. He's like good with numbers, like crazy, like very intelligent. But at the same time, when he doesn't get his way, he mimics what he sees around him. And that's another factor. A lot of times kids end up adapting habits off of what they see and who they've been around, especially when they go into school or daycare and they see that, you know, acting out, the kid gets their way at the end of the day. So some things are just learned behaviors that you have to kind of like monitor and break. But yeah, you know, try, try. Like that's all I can say. You got to tear them up. You got to tear them up. If if you have to, you see that talking to them and really like, all right. I'm talking about one of them talks where it kind of bores them to death, where they want to be like, I don't want to sit down with mommy and have that talk again. You know what I mean? And they rather go another route. If it works, it works. My father was a talker, so it's like we would be up to 3 in the morning and he'll be sitting there quoting scriptures and having deep conversations with us. But I cherish it, as a man, because a lot of the knowledge that I have today came from those talks, and he didn't have to raise a hand. You know what I mean? So what it say? One man plants, another man waters, and only God brings increase. All you got to do is plant the seeds and things will, come along. It might not be you. It might be, God might send that person that can establish that dominance to get them right. You never know. But as long as you plant the seeds, it's going to come to pass. And you're going to get the answer that you need.
Who we got next? We got um,
All right. So, Kesan, you touched on a couple points that I actually had wrote down here. And it's like the first thing that I stated is that there is no blueprint. It is trial and error. You learn as you go. And I do want to reiterate that with, what I'm saying, as you stated, that there is no blueprint. You have to figure it out. The one thing that I will caution you over though, however, is that especially being a single parent, is using those statements such as I'm going to tell so and so, or I'm going to, what I'm saying, tell this person or your aunt, your dad, your, whomever that you may put that authority figure to. Understand that when you are doing that, that is what's called a transfer of power. Your child is no longer afraid of what you would do to them. They are afraid of what someone else would do to them. And therefore, you may want to be that friendly parent, but you have just transferred all of your authority to someone else. So you have to be cautious when you're saying that and stand firm in what you're saying, but understand that, especially, and I cannot emphasize this enough, especially as a young boy being chastised, is one of those things that can cause trauma. So you want to be cautious as to how you do parent your child. Again, it is your child. You're capable of doing it however you want to, but from someone who actually came from an environment where mother was the disciplinary, she was the only person in the house that was going to be able to do anything, right? So, but by her being that disciplinary, her words cut, and they cut deep. And as a child, you don't know how to process those emotions. So you have to be caught. All I say is that you be cautious, that you're giving just as much praise as you are giving, saying negative comments when you're upset. Just make sure that you got a balance in there, so that the child understands that, yeah, I did something bad, but I also did something good, and I get recognized for both of them, as opposed to only just coming down whenever he's doing something that you don't feel is appropriate. When it comes down to that daycare part, but bringing it back down to the level where you are right now, because we're talking 4 or 5, right? He wants to play. Kids are free spirits. They just want to have fun, and every once in a while you got something that they are doing something, but they're kids at the same time. So how hard on him are you? Take away things that he really loves. Take away things that he loves to play with, television, the whole 9 yards. But you have to find out what it is that's going to touch him the most. You know what I'm saying? By what I mean, but when I say that, is that it's the thing that's going to grab his attention the most. Is what I mean. Because I know that he wants this one particular item more than anything in the world. This one particular item here. You know what I'm saying? But all right, and if you're doing remember what I said, I think it was yesterday when we was talking about that sticking carrot. You have to be cautious of that as well, because that creates that moment that goes forward as well. So it is a delicate balance that you have to find. But again, there's no blueprint. So you have to do what's right for you and what your child responds to in the most positive manner. And from that out, I'm out.
I was just gonna comment is whenever I do, so I do believe in spanking as well. That's how I got raised. But when I do spank him, it's, yeah, like he cries for a minute and then he's like, "Oh, I want a huggy." It's hard for me not to be like, "Oh my gosh, come here," uh, because I am a woman. And I am, I do have that like nurturing side, and it's hard for me not to be like, "I love you. I know, like, I don't like what you did. It's not okay to blah, blah, blah." But, like, do I not hug him? Do I just walk away? I don't know. What do I do? Like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know, you guys.
Well, I would say, I guess it's depending on if because a lot of time children will try to manipulate you by doing that. But with my daughter, now one thing about her, she was, very challenging. But after everything over with, I go in there and I talk with her, just to see, do she understand why she had to get a spanking or whatever the case may be. She would, when time to go to bed, they always come and give, put the phones up or whatever. But it was before they had phones. But she always did it. She came back with a genuine heart, and she would give a hug. So I could tell, I knew that she was a difficult child, but I know that her heart was pure. So if you don't feel that, if he's being manipulative by asking for a hug right after, he's, get a, discipline or whatever, then yes, I mean, I would say go for it, because you just never know, what they're going through, because you're not always around him. He go to school, right? And so you just don't never know. So he may be acting out, and because I remember when I was going through a whole lot, in my household or whatever, I would go to school and act out, you know because I needed, like when I got in like the fifth, hold on, fifth, I got in the sixth grade. What built me up was my teachers. They, when I get in trouble in school or whatever, they will all gather in the hallway and they will talk to me. Even though I had did wrong, they build me up, encourage me, hug me, or whatever. That was the things that I needed. And so by the time I got in the seventh grade, I, the person I was being, going through all that, it calmed me down. So that was like the first time that's my memory of, feeling like I was somebody, after you get what somebody do things to you or whatever, and you don't have no, understanding and no love, no nothing, hugs or whatever. That was like the worst feeling in the world. So I would say, yeah, give him a hug.
So I agree also with, you give them a hug, but also make sure, like they've already stated, get an understanding as far as making sure that the child understands why, like truly understands. You know what I mean? I tried that method even, in my parenting venture, you know, before we get the hugs on and all that, I need to know, do you understand what's going on, the dynamics of everything that's going on right now? But if they can sit there and tell you, oh well, I shouldn't have done this and I shouldn't have done that, then you're on one of it's like, okay, now we can embrace and now we try to move past it. But if they just going through the motions, you know what I mean, and it's not really registering, and you might run into a couple of stumbling blocks or repeated behaviors. But yeah, I was raised off the, you get those whoopings and then the long talks. But the long talks did more. It did some healing. It did some healing. Let me say that it did some healing because I think it reinforced the reason of, first of all, why I spanked you, and it reinforced that I do love you because I'm giving you the opportunity to express yourselves too in the process. So it's like it was kind of like the best of both worlds. So making sure that the kid has to understand, I believe, you know, will definitely make a big difference when it comes to the development overall.
Yes. So one of the most memorable spankings that I've ever received in my life came from my grandmother, and she only spanked me twice in my life. But after I got that spanking from her, because I did some stuff that I really shouldn't have been doing, right? It kind of obviously it got underneath their skin because I've only got two spankings from my grandmother in my entire life. But not only did she hug me, but she also gave me that kiss on the forehead to let me know why she did what she did, to allow me to see what I did hurt her so badly that she would actually take it to that level. So to me, I appreciated the softness that came behind the spanking, the reasoning that to be able to let me know what it was that I did wrong, not just that I was a bad kid, but here's what you did and here's how it made me feel. And now you got to feel this way. But at the same time, I love you. Don't do this no more. You know what I'm saying? To keep it moving. So, but yeah, definitely show the compassion after the action. You know what I'm saying? Just to let them know that we are still one team. You just stepped outside yourself, and now we just got to bring you back into alignment. That's all.
I just want to kind of intercede too as well that I feel like us as parents, we just kind of like, again, there, like everyone said, there's no blueprint. You kind of do what works for you. I know that my youngest daughter, again, there's two different personalities, right? My youngest daughter, she had a lot of separation anxiety. Terrible. I mean, terribly. And I mean, it gone from where I literally would drop her off at school at 8:05 or whatever the time it was. And at 8:10, 8:12, I'm getting a phone call talking about please turn around. She's tearing up the office. She done pulled the shelves down and crazy stuff. And I'm like, what is going on? And again, part of it has to do with the household, you know, and if you exude love and positivity, your child will feel that love and positivity as well. And I know I will say this, that when I was in my dark, toxic relationship for 21 years, even though I smiled, I was not happy. It was fake. And now that I'm in a happy space, and 2 years later, you know, with a man that's an amazing man, and that he is also concerned with my children, I'm concerned with his children too, and things like that, you know, it just brings, you know, just kind of like what Kesan said, where you never know, you may meet one person and that might be the authority figure that he may need. We all learn, you know, and it's a day-to-day thing. And there's not a right or wrong answer. It's all in what you know, feel is right and what fits, you know? That's pretty much it.
Okay, just real quick. So I don't know if you guys have had this, but my son asks about his dad. What do you guys say? Because he'll be like, "Where's my dad?" What do you? How do you answer? How do you? For me, I don't want to talk bad about him. That I said that in the beginning, and I told everybody around him not to. So how do you? Yeah. How? Yeah.
Well, in your situation, it's a bit different because of your situation and you had to leave or whatever. But that's a good question. But when my daughter used to ask for her dad, not my oldest daughter, her dad always been a part of her life. But when my baby girl asked for her dad, a lot of time I had to act like he was at work or something. And what I would do, because I used to just let her, call, and he may be at work, maybe, but just call him or whatever and just see. But then when she was smart enough to know he shouldn't be working all them hours. And so what I'll do is I'll sneak, and call him and just let him know, to see if he will answer. And it was hard trying to not seem like he's a bad parent or whatever. It was a lot. So I really just wanted to say, with your situation, it's a little bit different. But if he could just try to call him, or you call him and let him know that he want to speak with you.
I've
But
tried. I've tried that, and pretty much told me no. So I don't know.
also, you would let him talk to him, but he don't want to talk with him. Um, that's something you're gonna have to pray about, and maybe somebody on the panel have the answer. But that's sad.
Mhm.
I think, in all honesty, for me, I feel I was kind of also in the same position for my daughters, because after being 21 years together, from 21 years to not now really even seeing their dad or even hearing him talk or anything like that, or even paying attention to them, now that they're in their older days, older, a lot older than when he left or whatever. And it's hard because I'm not the type of person or parent that will sugarcoat anything. I just tell it like it is. And I always explain to them that you have an opportunity to speak to your dad. I'm not saying to not call him. You can call him, but then there's times when they did call him and it never worked. And again, part of why my children now suffer from severe anxiety, and they're all medicated, to have to be medicated because, you know, all the stress that all of this has caused them. One of my daughters has, it's called vasovagal syndrome, where she just passes out. I mean, you can like slowly tell him the truth when he's old enough to understand, but try not to sugarcoat it, because when he gets to a certain age where he'll learn about the real truth, you don't want it to backfire on you, you know, for not really telling him or saying or sugarcoating, or maybe not really telling him like what happened. And one thing's for sure, like with my daughters, I was very honest with them, you know, and they found out for themselves, dad had another family, dad, did this and like I said, my oldest daughter, she has somewhat of a loyalty to her dad and to me as well. But the younger daughter, she has no loyalty at all to her dad. And I don't blame her. I allow her to voice her opinion and how she feels because she was hurt, you know, not seeing him not doing things for us when we really needed him the most, and him just leaving us. And then finding out he has another family and he's traveling with them and he's posting shit on Facebook, and you do what's fit for you. But yeah, I mean, it's so hard because there is no right or wrong answer. You know, you kind of do what fits and what works for you is pretty much all I can say.
So, like you just said, there's no right or wrong answer. Being in the stepfather role at one point, we came across that same issue. And what I've learned is you operate in truth. You operate in truth, but some things I feel that you don't have to be blunt about. Kids are intelligent and they will know. They get the sense, you know what I mean? And they will come into the knowledge in due time. Questions will arise, even at the most opportune times, catch you off guard. I would say the best thing you can do is pray about it and, leave it in the higher power's hand, because it's no words that, because if we tell them the butt naked truth about it, you know what I mean? At the end of the day, they're not ready for that. They're not ready for the real story. You know what I mean? But also, morally driven. If most people that's morally driven, you don't want to, deceive them or, tell them a white lie, during the process just to ease their, the pain at the moment of time or their curiosity. So I would say just be led on how to go about it. You're gonna have your own way, It is it is gonna be challenging because it would be simpler if he would just pick up the phone and communicate, and then it would just be like, here's Pappy, you know what I mean? Like he's here, you know what I mean? You can talk to him. It's like it's nothing. But when you're trying to make that outreach and it's not reciprocated, or that's where it gets even more challenging, you know what I mean? But then, you never know what the future may hold. Someone may feel that, or that may come across, and no questions kind of go out the door, or they become old enough where when they do ask some questions, they're ready for the truth. So live and learn. That's all we can do. Live and learn, and it will come to you. There's many angels out here. You have step uncles, you have male figures even on the panel, what I mean, that can definitely give some guidance and insight. Over the years, I'm sure you forged some bonds, and you can use that, those male figures, that can kind of give them a little guidance, and it probably soften the blow a little bit. But it's on you, man.
Appreciate it. All right. So the one thing that I would say is this right here. Understand that kids see and they hear everything. So just because you may be having a conversation, you may think that they're not paying attention. They hear it. They see it. They watch it. They see your pain. They see you crying. They see, even when you may not say anything bad about dad directly to your son, if you're saying something bad about dad and you're on the phone, they hear that. So with that being said, just make sure, like everyone on the panel is saying, it's just to be truthful. If, hey, look, I called your dad, he don't want to answer the phone. That's what it is, then that's what it is. You know what I'm saying? Do not make excuses for him. Don't do that. Because those moments, I'd rather hear your truth. And I know it's a kid that we're talking about right now. So just give him the real. Just be real with him. You know what I'm saying? Love him. Just love on him. Just let him know that, you know what I'm saying, that you are there for him. And that, you know, that you can do whatever that you can possibly be. And while it is impossible, no matter how strong or independent you may be, you can never teach a young man how to be a man. That is something that you cannot do. You have never walked a day as a man on this planet, and therefore you would never know what it feels like to be a man. You can empathize with him, and you can tell him what you think it may be like, and I get that. But as far as telling him what it's like to actually do these things, I'm sorry, but you're going to need to find someone that you find as a positive male role model to allow him to guide him in certain aspects, because we're going to have different perspectives on things. Men and women, we just see things differently off rip on certain things, right? There are certain things that we can see eye to eye on, but most things, when it comes to that, you know how we somehow always seem to assign some type of role, gender role to something. It always gets attached, whether we want it to be there or not. The subject, again, going back to what I originally stated, the kids see everything, they hear. They definitely hear everything. So your demeanor, how you feel and react, is also going to affect how he feels towards his father. Because if mom is always hurt and always in tears, that brings resentment from me towards the person who's bringing those tears. That's making her feel unhappy. I'm not telling you to hide your emotions. Don't do that. But be honest with him when you communicate what it is. And with that, I will yield the rest of my time.
I agree with everything y'all said, but I like with my daughter, I was like, maybe he's at work, and I did that for a while. But I would just remember calling him and, you know, telling him that she wanted to talk with him or whatever, just, you know, like try to pick up the phone and, you know, answer or whatever. And he didn't. So I did get to a place where I told her he just don't want to talk. Was she like, because it was one particular day she just kept calling his phone because she got to a point to know that, in which it wasn't a lot because he did work a lot because he stayed on call. So that was, you know, my way of like trying to figure out if I tell her, because she was a little kid that ever since she was like one, I always got questions after questions after questions, you know what I'm saying? So I didn't want to dig a hole for myself, you know, and I didn't want to, you know, make him look bad. So a lot of time he was on call, but it wasn't for a fact that he was at work. So I would tell her that, but then she figured no. And another thing, she got a sister that's his. He would always tell her sister that he's at work, you know, and so he always, you know, I don't know, he would play back and forth. Like if I'm calling, he wouldn't answer the phone, you know, for whatever reason, because like I said, I always was kind of like, you know, the person that would make peace between him and his other child's mom. But then sometimes he'll just like flip and then answer her call and talk to the, you know, the sister or whatever. And so they communicated. So, you know, she started picking up on things, and I guess they probably had talked, and she said he's not, you know. So when I told her one particular time that he was he probably at work or whatever, she was buying that. So I got to a place where I would let her just call. And so she was like, he don't never answer the phone or whatever. I said, well, that means he don't want to talk, you know. And I didn't have to say no more after that. She just stopped calling. Eventually she started seeing him for who he really was, you know. And like Unc said, you have to be real careful when you're talking because they hear it. They hear everything. Because a lot of time I would be cautious of what I'm saying because I know that they hear. But her sister mom, when we are talking on the phone, she's not cautious of what she's saying. So therefore it's gonna get back to my daughter. And it was always I'm trying to explain it, but then I got to a place where, you know what, she just need to know the truth. And so I didn't ever bash him or anything, but I always just told him, well, he don't want to talk. I don't know why your dad would do you know, do these things or whatever. But I did assure her now that I believe that he do love you. And she didn't think that he did. And I said, well, I think he loved you, but he just have a funny way of showing his love. You know what I'm saying? Because I couldn't call whether he loved her, but to me, if I had to be honest, I wouldn't call it love. But I didn't want to never tell my daughter that because she already was going through something. I think I told y'all earlier she was going through something, with being picked on, and so we was already battling that. So to add on to her about her dad, I just couldn't do that. And I think I told y'all the story of like she one time told me that she didn't think her dad loved her, but she was a bit older, and that's because both of her sisters, like my oldest daughter had her dad last name, and then her sister by him had his last name, so that really bothered her. But once him and her talked, he signed her birth certificate, things changed. She never questioned whether he loved her, but at the same time, she went through all that to get her last name changed, and then all of a sudden she don't use that. Because what happened when he signed the birth certificate, we added his name. So when I went to pick her up from school one day, and I think that's when she kind of realized like who her dad were, because I signed her out, and when she came up to the office, she looked on the thing and she was like, why you be putting that on when you sign me out? And I was like, putting what? And she pointed at the last name. I was like, well, that's your last name. She's like, I don't use that name. She's like, I still going in our last name. I was like, oh. And then, like I said, I feel like that's when she realized like her daddy is full of it. But yeah, I just want to say that you have to be truthful with them, but you have to be mindful of, like I said, with her, she was already going through from the age of 4, beautiful girl, but didn't believe that she was beautiful, because kids would pick on her and made her feel like she was, ugly because of, the tooth growing big and then all the other ones small. But I'm done.
So I believe that's our time for the night. Really hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. I think that we got some really good conversation in today. Um, like I said, it's just an opportunity for us to get together and connect. And hope that the people out there, the audience, is actually receiving a message here that you can utilize, and that you come back in and you just kick it with us again. So again, thanks for coming in. This is All in One.